war. In World War II, the British went to President Roosevelt and they said, we need some guns, we need some ships, we need some bombs and some bullets. We need some technical support. Bring us some of your military thinkers. The United States said, we'll do you one better than that. We'll establish an entire program just for funding the British war machine. This is before Pearl Harbor. They called it Lend-Lease. What a joke. They didn't lend the British the bullets, they gave it to them. The British said, we need one battleship. America said, here, take 3. The British said, we need a crate of guns. The Americans said, we'll send you a whole boatload of them. They said, we need some technical advisors. Hey, we got some guys, reservists in the National Guard. We'll send them over. Anything you need, you got it as long as you want it. And that's the reason why when the Nazis tried to invade Britain, with the Battle of Britain, the British were ready. Because the Americans didn't just give what one time and say it was enough. They said, you know what, we're going to give until the Nazis are done. And last time I checked, it was Hitler who wound up blowing his brains out when he realized he had lost the war. But you know what? There's also another part of this. As long as we're using World War II analogies, there's another one I want you to keep in mind. And that's the Battle of Stalingrad. Hitler had made it all the way so deep into Russia, there were people who were sitting there saying, that's it. The Russians are going to be speaking German a year from now. But Stalin gave his soldiers the ultimate order. It was an order that people didn't think a man like him was capable of, but he showed the steel that he had. 4 words that changed the war for Russia. Not one step back. That was what Stalin told his men. Not one step back. And you know what happened. Now, a lot of people sit there and say, well, it was the Russian winter. The same winter that defeated Napoleon, defeated Hitler. Let me tell you something. If you think that a little bit of snow and some ice was going to stop the German Luftwaffe and the German Abwehr, you're crazy. How many Russians died in World War II? Over 8 million. At least it's the estimates are that high, civilian and soldier casualties. That's what the Russians were willing to give. There's a reason why Russia has been invaded many times and not conquered once. Britain was conquered by the Romans in the 1st century, conquered by the Anglo-Saxons in the 7th century, conquered by the Normans in the 11th century. Many countries have been conquered. Japan was finally conquered in World War II, but Russia was never conquered because they dug in their heels and said, forget it. We will give everything. Well, black people, that's the spirit that we need to rediscover. Now, some of you might wonder, especially some black people in Africa who don't know their history, you might want to look up what happened at the Battle of Dongola. That's Dongola, Dongola. The East Africans were being invaded by the Arabs. And this battle took place something like 1,200 or so years ago. And what happened was the East Africans fought so ferociously that the Arabs gave them a nickname. The nickname was pupil smiters, because the Africans, just as their ancient forebears had done in ancient Egypt, they had excellence in archery. So much excellence that when the Arabs showed up with their new leather armor, the Africans said, what part of that armor is vulnerable? The eye slits. So what they did was they trained themselves how to hit an object the size of a quarter. It even got so bad that when the Arabs went inland, the Africans would be in the hills. Some of them would even go up in the trees. The Arabs, they had never seen warfare like this before. And they said, they would call down from the trees and say, Arab, where would you like me to shoot you? And we know that the Arabs took horrible casualties because we have the letters of how the Arab commanders would write back to Arabia and say, I've lost another 1,000 men. They're casualties of war. They're blinded by the pupil smiters. Can you send me some more soldiers? I need replacements. East Africa handed the Arabs their Vietnam. And they didn't do it by just giving a little bit or giving what was comfortable. They said, we will not stop until we turn the Arab invader back. Unfortunately, things have changed in East Africa. They're making deals with the very people who their ancestors built walls to keep out. But they're not alone.